He'd been flying drones from a trailer for 3 years, just another blonde airman staring at screens in the Nevada desert. The other operators barely noticed him, just another body filling a chair at Creech Air Force Base. But when foreign agents breached the most classified hangar at Nellis and every experimental aircraft was compromised, he calmly walked past every checkpoint, through doors that didn't exist on any map, and climbed into a prototype that officially never flew, because the man they thought was just piloting Predator drones had been testing America's most secret aircraft all along. Welcome to Secrets Never Told. Before we dive into this incredible story of hidden aviation and classified technology, tell me in the comments what city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button. These are the secrets that soar above everything we know. His name was Captain Jake Mitchell, and for 3 years, he had been as invisible as the desert heat waves rising from the tarmac at Creech Air Force Base. Tall and athletic with sandy blonde hair that always seemed perfectly styled despite the Nevada sun, piercing blue eyes that could track multiple targets simultaneously, and the kind of rugged jaw that belonged on recruitment posters rather than behind a computer screen in a windowless trailer. The remote pilot aircraft operations center hummed with the constant low buzz of air conditioning and electronic equipment. Rows of stations where airmen controlled Predator and Reaper drones thousands of miles away, each pilot managing life and death missions from ergonomic chairs that felt more like video game setups than instruments of warfare. Around him, experienced drone operators guided unmanned aircraft over Afghanistan, Syria, and classified locations that appeared on no official maps. Major Thompson coordinated close air support for ground troops, while Jake monitored his assigned sector. Captain Rodriguez tracked high-value targets across multiple time zones, while Jake flew routine surveillance patterns. Technical Sergeant Davis managed complex multi-drone operations, while Jake handled what everyone assumed were simple reconnaissance missions. None of them knew that Captain Jake Mitchell held the highest experimental aircraft clearance in the U.S. Air Force. What they also didn't notice was that Jake wasn't just flying one drone. His workstation was secretly linked to prototype aircraft that pushed the boundaries of physics itself. While his colleagues controlled conventional UAVs, Jake was simultaneously testing hypersonic reconnaissance platforms, stealth fighters with experimental propulsion systems, and aircraft that could operate at altitudes where the atmosphere met space. The muscular physique hidden beneath his standard-issue flight suit wasn't from base gym workouts. It was from withstanding G-forces that would incapacitate normal pilots, from ejection seat training for aircraft that officially didn't exist, and from survival exercises in environments where conventional rescue was impossible. Each night after his colleagues left the trailer, Jake would receive encrypted orders through what appeared to be routine maintenance updates to his workstation. These weren't software patches. They were flight plans for test missions that pushed experimental aircraft beyond their theoretical limits. While Creech Air Force Base slept, Jake would drive through unmarked desert roads to hidden airfields where aircraft that defied conventional understanding waited for pilots capable of handling technology decades ahead of its time. The psychological conditioning required for Blackbird Division operations was as intense as the physical training. Jake had undergone neural enhancement procedures that allowed him to process flight data at superhuman speeds, react to situations faster than normal human reflexes would allow, and maintain consciousness during maneuvers that would cause most pilots to black out. His blue eyes weren't just naturally sharp. They had been enhanced with retinal implants that could track multiple high-speed targets simultaneously and interface directly with aircraft systems. Thursday morning started like any other. Jake arrived at Creech Air Force Base at 0500 hours through the same security checkpoint he'd used for 3 years, his worn ID badge reading RPA Pilot, Secret Clearance. He made his way to Trailer 17, where he would spend the next 12 hours in what appeared to be routine drone operations. What his badge didn't show was the quantum-encrypted authorization chip that could access hangars at Nellis Air Force Base, where aircraft decades ahead of public technology waited for test flights that never appeared on any schedule. By 0600 hours, Jake was settled into his workstation, multiple monitors displaying what appeared to be standard Predator drone feeds from the Middle East. He monitored insurgent movement pattern, tracked convoy routes, and provided overwatch for special operations teams, the same missions his colleagues performed every day. Sector 7 looking quiet this morning, commented Major Thompson from the adjacent station. Copy that, Jake replied, his blue eyes scanning displays that showed much more than desert landscapes. Through encrypted data streams invisible to everyone else in the trailer, he was simultaneously monitoring test flights of aircraft that could travel from Nevada to any point on Earth in under 2 hours. What Major Thompson Thompson didn't know was that Jake's routine surveillance included real-time testing of quantum radar system, experimental cloaking technology, and propulsion systems that bent the rules of aerodynamics. At exactly 0847 hours, everything changed. The first indication wasn't an alarm, it was silence. The constant chatter of radio communications with overseas operations suddenly stopped. Status lights that had been green for years turned red across every workstation in the trailer. Jake's hands never paused on his controls, but his enhanced spatial awareness immediately shifted into a different mode, processing threat levels and response protocols that had been programmed into him through years of classified training. Blackbird alert. All experimental assets compromised. Prepare for phase echo authorization. The second wave hit 30 seconds later. Base-wide lockdown sirens as Nellis Air Force Base, 15 miles away, went into complete security isolation. Emergency broadcasts echoed across Creech. All personnel remain at current positions. This is not a drill. Unauthorized personnel have breached classified facilities. Chaos erupted throughout the trailer. Drone operators lost contact with their aircraft. Mission commanders demanded status updates that no one could provide. Technical staff tried to restore systems that had been mysteriously severed from their networks. "What's the situation?" Major Thompson shouted as emergency personnel began coordinating through backup communication systems. "Sir, we've lost all uplinks to overseas operations," reported Captain Rodriguez. "Every drone feed is dark. It's like someone flipped a master switch." Through it all, Jake continued operating his workstation, but beneath his calm exterior, his mind was racing. The timing was too precise. Intelligence reports had warned Blackbird Division 3 days ago that foreign operatives were planning something unprecedented, a simultaneous strike designed to steal America's most advanced aircraft technology during a window when test flights were scheduled. Through his hidden communication system, Jake was receiving real-time updates from Nellis, showing that the breach was even worse than anticipated. Hostile forces hadn't just penetrated the perimeter, they had accessed Hangar 18, where prototypes worth more than most countries' entire defense budgets were stored. The stolen aircraft weren't just advanced, they represented quantum leaps in aerospace technology. The Aurora 7 prototype used propulsion systems based on classified physics research that wouldn't be publicly acknowledged for 50 years. Its engines could manipulate gravitational fields, allowing it to achieve velocities that traditional jet propulsion couldn't approach. The stealth coating wasn't just radar absorbent, it could bend light around the aircraft, making it essentially invisible to human observers. But what made the theft truly catastrophic was that these weren't just experimental vehicles. They were proof-of-concept platforms for technology that could revolutionize not just military aviation, but human understanding of physics itself. In the wrong hands, the propulsion systems alone could be reverse-engineered to create weapons that would make nuclear arsenals obsolete. Airman Mitchell, Senior Master Sergeant Williams, approached his station. "All non-essential personnel are being moved to secure areas." Jake looked up with the same focused expression he wore during complex targeting operations. "Roger, Sergeant. Just finishing the surveillance pass." Sergeant Williams nodded and moved on to coordinate the evacuation, unaware that he'd just spoken to the only person in the building who could stop the theft of technology that could shift global military balance. As the trailer emptied, Jake methodically secured his workstation and logged out of systems that appeared to be standard drone controls. But he wasn't really logging out. He was activating dormant protocols that would transfer his access to mobile command system. He walked calmly to what appeared to be a maintenance closet containing communications equipment. His ID badge didn't just scan. It triggered a 7-layer authentication system that verified his biometrics, analyzed his gait pattern, and confirmed authorization codes embedded in a subcutaneous chip. The closet opened to reveal not communications gear, but military equipment designed for operations that officially never occurred. A flight suit made from materials that didn't appear in any textbook, equipment that could sustain human life in environments beyond Earth's atmosphere, and navigation systems that relied on technology decades ahead of anything the public knew existed. Meanwhile, 15 miles away at Nellis Air Force Base, in the most secure hangar complex in the United States, the most advanced aircraft designers and test pilots in America were dealing with a crisis that threatened to expose projects that had been classified for decades. Colonel Sarah Hayes looked around the emergency command center at her assembled team: aerospace engineers, experimental test pilots, and security specialists who managed technology that pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible. "Status report," Colonel Hayes demanded. "Ma'am, Hangar 18 has been compromised," replied Major Patterson, the head of security. "Foreign operatives have accessed the Aurora prototype and at least 3 other experimental aircraft. They appear appear to have detailed knowledge of our security protocols. How long until they can extract with the technology? Unknown, ma'am, Patterson replied grimly. These aren't conventional thieves. They're using equipment and techniques that suggest they've been planning this operation for years. Lieutenant Colonel Brooks, the senior test pilot, leaned forward. What about our rapid response capabilities? Can we scramble conventional fighters? Negative, Colonel Hayes confirmed. The stolen aircraft operate on technology that makes them undetectable to standard radar. If they achieve flight status, we'll lose them completely. That's when the command center's main door opened, and Captain Jake Mitchell walked in. The silence was immediate. Security personnel instinctively reached for weapons before recognizing his face. The drone operator from Creech Air Force Base. But something was different about him now. Gone was the slightly relaxed posture of someone accustomed to sitting at computer terminals. His movements were precise, confident, and carried the unmistakable bearing of someone trained for high-stress flight operations. "Excuse me," stammered Security Chief Rodriguez. "Captain, this is a restricted area." Jake didn't respond to him. Instead, he walked directly to the experimental aircraft status console that had been dark since the breach began. He placed his palm on what appeared to be a standard control interface, but the gesture triggered biometric scanners that had been installed for only the most elite test pilots. The scanner flashed green, and suddenly the entire command center came alive with data streams from aircraft that weren't supposed to exist. Real-time telemetry from hypersonic vehicles, stealth fighters with experimental engines, and reconnaissance platforms that operated at the edge of space. "Aurora 7 systems online," Jake announced in a voice that was no longer casual or deferential. The tone was crisp, authoritative, professional. All Blackbird assets secured, pursuit capabilities activated. The transformation in his voice was so complete that several people in the room stepped backward. This wasn't the same person who had been flying routine drone missions from a trailer. Colonel Hayes stared at him, struggling to process what she was witnessing. "Who are you?" Jake turned to face the room, and for the first time in 3 years, he dropped his carefully maintained cover completely. The change was startling, not just in posture and voice, but in the way he seemed to command the space around him. His blue eyes, which had always seemed focused on distant screens, now held the precision of someone accustomed to making split-second decisions at supersonic speeds. "Ma'am, my name is Captain Jake Mitchell, operational designation Blackbird 1. I am the lead test pilot for Blackbird Division, the Air Force's most classified experimental aircraft program. I've been embedded at Creech Air Force Base for the past 3 years, maintaining operational security while testing prototypes that require absolute compartmentalization." The room erupted in confused voices until Colonel Hayes raised her hand for silence. But it was the look in Jake's eyes that actually quieted the room, a look that suggested he had capabilities that went far beyond what anyone had imagined. "Blackbird Division?" Colonel Hayes asked carefully. "Captain, I'm the commanding officer of all experimental aircraft programs at Nellis. I would know about any test pilot operations of this magnitude. That's by design, ma'am. Blackbird Division operates under direct Pentagon authority, but with compartmentalization so strict that knowledge of our existence is limited to 12 people in the entire Air Force. You're about to become the 13th. He activated displays showing aircraft performance data that made everyone in the room realize they had been working with only a fraction of America's true aerospace capabilities. Vehicles that could achieve speeds beyond Mach 10, aircraft that could operate in near-space environments, and propulsion systems that seemed to violate known laws of physics. Major Patterson stepped forward, his face flushed with professional frustration. "This is impossible. I'm head of security for all classified aircraft at Nellis. I would know about any test pilot with this level of access." Jake looked at him with an expression that was professional but carried unmistakable authority. "Major Patterson, your clearance covers conventional experimental aircraft. Blackbird Division handles prototypes that require capabilities beyond standard test pilot training." He brought up files that made Patterson stagger backward. Aircraft specifications that were decades ahead of anything in their official program. Test flight data from vehicles that had achieved performance parameters that seemed impossible. "More importantly," Jake continued, "the theft we're dealing with involves technology that conventional response capabilities cannot address. The Aurora prototype they've stolen uses propulsion systems that make it untrackable by any known detection method." Lieutenant Colonel Brooks found his voice. "You're saying they have aircraft we can't even see?" "I'm saying they have aircraft that can outrun, outmaneuver, and disappear from anything in our conventional arsenal," Jake confirmed, pulling up pursuit projections that showed the stolen vehicles moving at speeds that made intercepting them nearly impossible. He switched to another display showing global tracking systems. "But they don't know that Blackbird Division has been anticipating this theft for 6 months. We've been monitoring their planning, tracking their assets, and preparing response capabilities they don't know exist. Colonel Hayes leaned forward. You mean you knew this was coming? We've been watching every communication, every reconnaissance flight, every preparation they've made for this operation. We allowed it to proceed so we could identify their complete network and eliminate it permanently. Jake activated another display showing experimental aircraft that made the stolen prototypes look primitive by comparison. While they were planning to steal Aurora 7, we've been testing Aurora 12. While they think they've acquired our most advanced stealth technology, we've been developing systems that make stealth irrelevant. The implications were staggering. Major Patterson struggled to find words. How long has Blackbird Division been operating? Since 1962, Jake replied. Originally created to develop aircraft that could operate in environments and at speeds that conventional engineering said were impossible. We've evolved to test technology that won't be publicly acknowledged for decades. He pulled up personnel files that made several people in the room realize how little they actually knew about their own organization. Every major aerospace breakthrough in the past 30 years has been tested by Blackbird Division first. And you've been hiding here, flying computer simulations? Lieutenant Colonel Brooks asked, incredulous. Jake's smile was slight, but carried depths of experience. The drone operations provide perfect cover for experimental flight testing. While my colleagues think I'm controlling UAVs over the Middle East, I'm actually testing hypersonic aircraft that can reach any point on Earth in under 90 minutes. He gestured to the displays showing global flight pattern. I've been gathering performance data while appearing to fly routine surveillance missions. Every hour spent in that trailer included test flights of aircraft that pushed the boundaries of what's considered possible. Colonel Hayes studied the man who had been invisible in plain sight for years. What happens now? Now we execute the intercept, Jake replied, his fingers dancing across controls that were responding to neural commands transmitted through his implant. The stolen aircraft are equipped with tracking systems they don't know about, and we have pursuit capabilities they can't escape. He activated a display showing real-time positions of the stolen vehicles. We have approximately 20 minutes before they reach international airspace. After that, diplomatic complications make recovery significantly more difficult. Colonel Hayes looked at the tracking data. What kind of intercept operation? The kind that demonstrates why stealing American aerospace technology is a terminal mistake, Jake replied with absolute certainty. When this operation concludes, our adversaries will realize that what they thought they stole was obsolete compared to what we actually have. The weight of what he was describing settled over the room. This wasn't just about recovering stolen aircraft. This was about demonstrating technological superiority that would discourage future attempts. How many aircraft are we talking about? Major Patterson asked. 4 stolen prototypes currently en route to hostile territory, Jake confirmed. But we'll be deploying 12 pursuit vehicles with capabilities that make the stolen aircraft look like World War II fighters. He brought up real-time flight plans showing the intercept operation. Each stolen vehicle will be surrounded, disabled, and recovered without the theft ever being acknowledged publicly. Colonel Hayes realized she was looking at a capability that redefined American air superiority. Do it! Jake nodded and began executing commands that triggered the most sophisticated aerospace recovery operation in history. Across the Nevada desert, aircraft that had never appeared on any public documentation began launching for missions that would never be officially reported. The operation lasted exactly 18 minutes. When it was over, Jake turned back to the stunned officials in the command center. Stolen aircraft recovered, ma'am. All foreign operatives contained. Blackbird technology secure. The recovery hadn't been just a simple intercept. It had been a demonstration of capabilities that redefined what was possible in aerospace operations. The 12 pursuit vehicles had surrounded the stolen prototypes using formation flying techniques that seemed to ignore the laws of physics, matching impossible maneuvers and maintaining pursuit at speeds that should have torn conventional aircraft apart. More importantly, the recovery had been accomplished without the hostile forces ever realizing they were being tracked. The stolen aircraft had been disabled using electromagnetic pulse systems that left the thieves unconscious but unharmed, allowing for intelligence extraction that would expose their entire network. The prototypes were recovered intact, their systems untampered with, and the foreign operatives captured with evidence that would prevent similar attempts for decades. But the most significant aspect of the operation was what it revealed about American aerospace capabilities. The pursuit vehicles had operated at altitudes and speeds that pushed the boundaries of what was considered possible, demonstrating technology that made even the stolen prototypes look primitive by comparison. What happens now? Colonel Hayes asked. Now you forget this conversation happened, Jake replied, his voice returning to its familiar casual tone. Tomorrow morning, I'll be back in Trailer 17, flying what appears to be routine drone operations, and you'll continue believing I'm just another ARPI pilot with good reflexes. was. He moved toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Colonel Hayes? The new hypersonic reconnaissance platform I've been testing will be ready for operational deployment next month. Every hostile aircraft on Earth will become visible to us, even when they think they're undetectable. How is that possible? Because for 3 years, I haven't just been flying drones, Jake replied with a smile that held depths of capability most people couldn't imagine. I've been redefining what aircraft can do when physics is treated as a suggestion rather than a limitation. As he left the command center, Colonel Hayes realized she was looking at someone who wielded more real power over American aerospace superiority than anyone else in the room. Power that operated in plain sight, protected by the assumption that the most capable pilots must be the most visible ones. The next morning, Captain Jake Mitchell was back in Trailer 17 at Creech Air Force Base, his blonde hair perfectly styled, his blue eyes focused on monitors that appeared to show routine Predator drone operations. When Major Thompson arrived for his shift, Jake looked up with his familiar friendly expression. "Morning, sir." Sector 7 is all quiet, standard patrol patterns. Major Thompson nodded, settling into his workstation without realizing that the man next to him had spent the previous day testing aircraft that could reach orbit, recovering stolen prototypes from hostile forces, and demonstrating technologies that wouldn't be publicly acknowledged for decades. "Coffee's fresh," Jake added with the same casual demeanor he'd maintained for 3 years. As he returned to his monitors, Major Thompson caught a glimpse of Jake's hands on the control, hands that moved with a precision that suggested far more complex operations than drone guidance. Calluses that came from grips designed for aircraft that pulled G-forces beyond human endurance. But Major Thompson didn't ask questions. In the world of classified operations, some capabilities were better left unexamined. Some secrets fly higher than anyone imagines. Some pilots push boundaries that officially don't exist. And sometimes the most advanced aircraft in the world are piloted by someone everyone assumes is just good with computers. Jake Mitchell returned to his work, protecting American airspace with technology that would never make headlines, testing aircraft that would never appear in museums, and maintaining air superiority through capabilities that remained classified decades after their development. Because that's what Blackbird Division does. They soar beyond the possible by operating beyond the visible, and they disappear so completely that even their victories remain at altitudes no one else can reach. The perfect secret, flying in plain sight.